You know, we trust that social groups evolve organically, right? Based on merit and connection. Yet, somehow, a single manipulative person can rise to the top and start dictating all the rules, without having any real leadership qualities.
Well, this is the dark psychological paradox of what's called social hierarchy engineering, a really calculated manipulation of group dynamics. It's that unsettling feeling you get when a group's entire vibe just shifts. All of a sudden, communication feels strained, like there's static on the line, and one person, often the last one you'd expect, ends up at the center of everything. Think about it. It's the friend group that suddenly has an unspoken spokesperson, or that work team where all information mysteriously has to flow through one colleague. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on exactly how they do it.
So, the technical term for this is social hierarchy engineering. And you got to think of the manipulator not just as a player in the social game, but as the one who's secretly redesigning the whole board. Their goal is to systematically tear down the group's natural structure and then rebuild it, but with them as the indispensable hub. Every piece of info, every conflict, every decision, it's all designed to flow through them. They become the gatekeeper, and the price of admission is their validation and control. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to look at the social architect's blueprint and then break down their three-stage takedown. After that, we'll get into the psychology behind it all, this game of fear and status. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to spot them, how to reestablish direct communication, and how to get the group's integrity back. Okay, first up, the architect's blueprint. I want to be really clear here. This isn't just random chaos or some petty office drama. No, this is a strategic, calculated operation. The manipulator looks at a social group not as the community of people, but as a system to be hacked and controlled. To them, relationships are just levers to pull, and trust, well, trust is just a resource to be mined.
So, the kind of people who do this, they typically score really high in two specific psychological traits: narcissism and Machiavellianism. The narcissism gives them the motive, this bottomless pit of a need for admiration and status. We call it narcissistic supply. And the Machiavellianism, that gives them the method. It's a cunning, strategic, the ends justify the means kind of mindset. Their ultimate goal is what we call control and supply maximization. They want total control to guarantee a constant stream of attention and power. And how do they get it? By finding and ruthlessly exploiting the natural vulnerabilities that exist in any human group.
So how do they actually pull this off? It's not just one single act. It's a methodical process, almost like a social heist that happens in 3 distinct stages. And believe me, understanding this pattern is the key to everything.
These are the 3 phases of the whole operation: decentering, recentering, and then status maintenance. First, they have to destabilize the existing structure. Then, they restructure the whole thing around themselves. And finally, they create a feedback loop to keep their new status locked in place. Let's break down each one.
The very first move is always decentering. I mean, think about it. A manipulator can't become the new center of power if the old one is still there. So they target the group's natural leaders, the respected, trusted, influential people. They use these subtle smear campaigns spreading rumors, or using what's called selective revelation, where they share a little grain of truth completely out of context to paint a false picture. The goal here is simple: isolate the leaders, destroy the group's trust in them, and create a power vacuum. Because a confused, destabilized group is a vulnerable group, just waiting for a new leader to step in and fix things. Okay, before we move to the next stage, we have to talk about the manipulator's favorite tool, triangulation. This is so important. Instead of 2 people talking directly, the manipulator wedges themselves right in the middle. They become the messenger between person A and person B. And what does that do? It gives them total control over the information. They can twist messages, create misunderstandings, and make themselves look like the only one who really gets what's going on. And that leads us right into their next big move, recentering. With the old leaders out of the picture and a nice power vacuum waiting, the manipulator steps right into that void. Using triangulation, they make themselves the essential hub for all communication. If 2 people have a problem, they don't talk to each other. No, they both go talk to the manipulator. And pretty soon, every important conversation, every bit of gossip, every alliance, it all has to pass through them. They've literally become the central node in the social network. And to make this new structure permanent, they use a few key tactics. We've talked about how they control conflicts with triangulation, but they also reward anyone who shows them personal loyalty, maybe with some insider info or a bit of approval. They use something called intermittent reinforcement, giving out rewards unpredictably, like a slot machine, which keeps people totally hooked. And at the same time, they subtly punish anyone who questions them, usually by freezing them out of the group.
And just like that, they become the absolute informational gatekeeper, cementing a new hierarchy that's not based on merit, but on loyalty to them.
So you might be wondering, why does this even work? Why do smart, capable people fall into this trap? Well, that brings us to the psychology of it all. It's a really powerful game that pits the manipulator's deepest needs against the group's deepest fears. And what's so fascinating is the stark contrast in what drives them. The manipulator is all about status and control. They're playing offense. But the group members, they're driven by a fundamental human need to belong. And that creates a massive vulnerability, the fear of ostracism. You see, being cast out of the tribe used to be a literal death sentence for our ancestors, and that fear is still hardwired into our brains. The manipulator exploits this primal fear, making it feel way safer to just conform than to risk being kicked out.
So, okay, understanding the blueprint and the psychology behind it is one thing. But seeing it happen in your own life, at your job, in your friend group, in your family, that raises a much more urgent question. How in the world do you actually fight back against something so subtle and insidious?
Well, your first line of defense isn't a big confrontation. It's actually observation. It all starts with learning to see the invisible structure they've built. You have to learn how to expose the bottleneck. An informational bottleneck. That is the absolute hallmark of a recentered group. You just have to start asking yourself a few questions. Is there one person who seems to be at the center of every single drama? Are they always the main source of information about what other people are supposedly thinking or feeling? When you notice that all roads, all communication, all conflict seems to lead back to one single person, you've done it. You have successfully identified the engineered bottleneck. And that awareness, right there, that is the critical first step to taking their power away.
All right, so once you've spotted the bottleneck, the countermeasure is to actively, deliberately break their pattern of triangulation. This is where you go from being a passive observer to an active resistor.
And here's exactly how you do it. Step 1, you have to refuse to be a pawn in their game. When the manipulator comes to you with some juicy gossip about someone else, you can just say something like, "Hey, I appreciate you letting me know, but I'd feel a lot better talking to them about this directly." Step 2, insist on it for others. If they tell you, Person A is really upset with you, your response should be, "Oh, okay, I'll go talk to Person A right now and we'll clear it up." And finally, step 3, for the people you really trust, you form a transparency pact. That's an agreement that if you hear something weird about each other from the manipulator, you promise to go directly to the source and check it out before you believe it. This just completely short-circuits their entire system.
And all of this leads us to the ultimate goal, which, let's be honest, isn't just about stopping one person. It's about rebuilding a healthy, functional group dynamic that's based on real trust and directness. It's about restoring the group's integrity. Let this sink in for a moment. The manipulator's power isn't some kind of magic. It doesn't come from their charisma or their brilliance. It comes from just one thing: controlling the distance and the communication between other people. They thrive in that space they create between friends and colleagues, and they build their throne on the very misunderstandings that they themselves engineered. So let's bring this all home. Social hierarchy engineering is the strategic blueprint for how manipulators quietly restructure a group around themselves. The pattern is always the same. Decentering creates a power vacuum by taking out the real leaders. Recentering fills that vacuum using triangulation, making them the new indispensable hub. And the rest of the group falls in line out of a deep-seated fear of ostracism. But here's the good news. Awareness breaks the whole loop. By identifying the informational bottleneck and having the courage to assert direct communication, you dismantle their entire engineered hierarchy. You close the distance they work so hard to create. And in doing that, you don't just expose a manipulator, you restore integrity, trust, and genuine connection to your group.